Ever feel like different generations just don't get each other? Certified coach, licensed therapist, and speaker Tess Brigham tackles the generational challenges shaping our personal and professional lives on The Gen Mess with Tess.
Hello and welcome to The Gen Mess with Tess, where we're not just fixing the mess, we're figuring out how to live in it. I'm your host, Tess Brigham. So let's start making sense of the mess together. So today I'm going to talk about why work and the things that we experience at work they are psychological. So because we've been taught to think about work as performance, as productivity, as output, do your job, work hard, be professional, get results. And if you do all those things, you should be fine. But that's not actually how we experience work. Because work is not just tasks. Work is our identity. Work is belonging. Work is safety, right? Money, how we pay for our lives. Work is how we measure ourselves. Work is where we unfortunately spend most of our time and where we're being observed, where we're being evaluated, compared, and judged. So of course it feels a little personal when things happen, right? If work were just tasks, you wouldn't lie in bed at night replaying a conversation you had with your boss. You wouldn't read into someone's tone on Slack. You wouldn't spiral because someone didn't respond to your message. The reason work feels so intense is because your brain is not experiencing it as neutral. Your brain is constantly scanning your environment, right? And asking very important questions like, am I safe here? Do I belong here? Am I doing okay? What do people think of me? And this is not you being narcissistic or dramatic. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it's designed to do. Because our brains don't separate a physical threat from a social threat. Rejection, criticism, exclusion, uncertainty, they all register as danger. So when your boss gives you a vague feedback or your brain doesn't just hear information, it hears potential threat. What did they mean by that feedback? When you're left off of a meeting invite, your brain doesn't go, oh, that was probably an oversight. It goes, did I do something wrong? Am I on the outside? Am I being pushed out? That's why a short email can just ruin your day. That's why one comment can stick with you for hours or days or maybe even years. And it's not because you're weak. It's because your brain is wired for connection and protection. This is how we survive, is connection and protection. And then we layer this on with identity, where things get even more complicated, right? Because work is not just something that we do. It's a huge part of how we define who we are. Especially for younger generations who are told, follow your passion, find meaningful work, build a career that reflects who you are. So now it's not just, I have a job. It's, this job says something about me. Again, am I successful? Am I smart? Am I where I'm supposed to be? Or am I behind? All of those questions. So work starts to become a bit of a scoreboard for your life. So when something goes wrong at work, it doesn't stay contained to the actual task that you're doing. It expands into your identity. You missed a deadline. Instead of thinking, oh, I need to adjust my workflow, you think, maybe I'm not cut out for this. Or you get some constructive feedback, and instead of hearing, here's how you can improve, you hear, you're not good enough. That leap from behavior to identity, that is psychological, and it happens fast, within milliseconds. And most people don't even realize that they're doing it because it happens that fast. This is also why comparison hits so hard at work, because now you're not just comparing roles or salaries, you're comparing identities. You're looking around and thinking, there seems to be more confident people here than me. They seem to get it faster. They seem to belong here. And then your brain starts to build a story. And that story is, maybe I'm behind. Maybe I'm the only one who feels this way. Maybe everyone else has it worked out. And that story starts to shape how you show up. You second guess yourself more. You speak up less. You over prepare or overwork. You try to prove yourself in ways that no one actually is asking you to. And then people look at you and say, well, why are you so stressed? Why are you overthinking this? Because no one has explained that this is not just a work experience. This is a psychological experience. And this is actually one of the reasons why I created my Gen Z retention playbook. Because what I kept seeing over and over again in my work with organizations is that leaders were trying to solve what looks like a performance problems and communication problems or engagement problems, but underneath these were actually psychological experiences that no one was naming. Right? Things like feeling unclear, feeling constantly evaluated, not knowing where you stand, not feeling safe enough to ask questions or mistakes. And if you don't understand that layer, you can just keep throwing strategies at the problem and nothing really changes. That's why the playbook is not just about how to manage Gen Z. It's about understanding what they are actually experiencing at work so you can respond in a way that actually works. And this is where I want to talk about Gen Z for a minute, because there is so much conversation right now about them, and a lot of it really completely misses what's actually happening. Gen Z is a generation, they are not more sensitive. They are just more aware of their internal experience. They are more likely to say, this doesn't feel good. I don't feel supported. And this is affecting my mental health. Listen, older generations, myself included, we all had these internal reactions. We just didn't have a language for it. Or we were taught that the right thing to do or the solution was to push through it, ignore it, or suppress it. And so what we're seeing now is not a new problem. It's just a more visible problem. And because it's more visible, it also becomes more misunderstood. And unfortunately, it's being labeled as entitlement or lack of resilience or not wanting to work hard. But when you actually sit down with young people, what they'll tell you is, I wasn't prepared for how work would feel. I wasn't prepared to have something feel so personal. No one told them that they would constantly feel evaluated. No one told them that they would question themselves this much. No one told them that they would feel like they have to prove themselves at all the time while also trying to figure out who they are as people. They're not confused about what they're feeling. They're confused about why no one warned them. And this matters, not just for young people, but for leaders, for managers, for organizations. Because if you don't understand that work is psychological, you will misread what's happening in your workplace. You will look at someone and think, oh, they're disengaged. They're not taking initiative. They're too sensitive. When what might actually be happening is they feel unclear about expectations. They don't feel safe asking questions, and they feel like they're constantly being judged. And that's a completely different problem. So this is why communication issues are often anxiety issues. This is why performance issues are actually often clarity issues. And this is why retention issues, this is why retention is not just about compensation or perks. It's a mental health issue. Because if someone feels chronically unsafe, unseen, or unsure in an environment, they're not going to stay. Not because they don't care, but because their nervous system is exhausted. And we keep trying to solve these problems at this surface level. Oh, let's just give them more feedback, more check-ins, more perks. But if we don't address the psychological experience of work, we're actually missing the actual issue. So the reframe here is simple, but it's very, very powerful. Instead of asking yourself, how do I perform better at work? Start asking yourself, what is happening for me psychologically at work? Where do I feel unclear? Where do I feel like I don't belong? Where do I feel constantly evaluated? And for leaders, instead of asking, why aren't they stepping up? Ask, what might they be experiencing that I'm not seeing? Because people don't just show up as employees. We're not, this isn't severance. They show up as human beings with nervous systems, identities, and, deep need to feel safe and capable. Work is not just something you do, it's something that you experience. And if we keep pretending that it's just about productivity and output, we're going to keep missing what's actually going on underneath the surface. So if you're listening right now and thinking, okay, well, Tess, this makes sense, but why does it feel so intense right now? Well, that's what I'm going to talk about next in the next solo episode, because early career today is not just challenging, it's psychologically brutal. And no one is talking about what it actually feels like to be at the beginning of your career right now. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in to the Gen Mess with Tess. Remember, we're not just fixing the mess, We're learning how to live in it. Stay curious, be kind to yourself, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.
You've been listening to the Gen Mess with Tess with your host, Tess Brigham. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And make sure to follow Tess Brigham on all social channels. To learn more about Tess's books, courses, or to have Tess speak to help clean up the Gen Mess at your organization, head on over to tessbrigham.com. Thanks for listening.